Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm back out again with Sonia. We are down at Hayling Island today, but what I wanted to do this video on is actually, we've had a couple of comments saying, how did you get into boating? You know, what do we need to do? What do we need to look for? So I thought I'd just put something quickly together to sort of give you an idea of how we did it, and then you know, that might give you something, a starting point. So if you're, you know, if you've got a caravan or you're a motorhome already and you're interested in getting a boat, but you don't know where to start, it's all brand new. Like this is the sort of route that we went. So first off was to get some training. Now I went on the Powerboat Level 2 course, which is a 2-day course. And it teaches you all the fundamentals of using a small rib sports boat, something that you'll use on coastal waters and rivers. So you get to, they'll show you how to plot a navigation on a chart, on a map. You get to some courses will actually let you we'll learn how to put a boat on a trailer as well, so you'll be able to launch and recover. So if that's something that you really want to do, because you're going to be into trailer boating like us, then getting a course that has the launch and recovery would be really handy. And they will take you out to sea as well. You get a couple of sessions out at sea, learning to moor your boat, learning how to just drive it, basically. You'll do man overboard, all the sort of safety issues that you'll need when you go out on your boat. It's really helpful, and at the end of it you'll get a certificate or a license for a Powerboat Level 2, and that actually lets you you can then apply for an ICC, which is the European sort of equivalent, which means that if you wanted to go on a European holiday, hire out a catamaran for the week, you would have the qualification to be able to do that. So then you could have you could sell your own boat out there. So that opens up a lot of opportunities and means that you've got the experience that you need. The cost of the courses are about £350 to £400 for the 2-day course. The next thing that you need to do is to be proficient at the VHF radio. So you need a VHF radio license. Now they can cost anywhere from sort of £60 to £150 for the course. It's usually a 1-day course, and they will teach you everything you need to know. You'll need to know the phonetic alphabet and how to actually do pan calls and mayday calls. And they're the most essential parts, but they'll teach you all the things about how long wave radios work, and essentially sort of like the distance that they can travel. The other things that you'll probably need, on your boat you may have sort of a navigation system, but if you haven't, if it's a small rib and it hasn't got that, you may want to invest in like a app, like the Navionics app or the Navvy app. Both are like navigation systems for the sea, so you can plot your destination, your starting point, just like on Google Maps. You can plot where you want to go, and it will find you the best route there and the safest route through the channels. So that's really nice and really helps with navigating your way, because when you're out there it can be quite daunting. So having some sort of navigation system to help you was a must for us. So we actually have used both. We've got Navionics and Savvy Navvy at the moment. We're moving over to Savvy Navvy. That one does have other features like anchorages. It shows all the anchorages, and so if you want to sleep overnight in certain places, you can see what reviews, whether that people give you information on sort of like what to avoid, what winds to avoid, etc., etc., in those places, which is quite handy. So those are the basic things of getting trained, basically, so then you're capable of driving your boat when you buy it. Now it comes to actually buying the boat. Now it all depends on the budget that you have, but if you're going to sort of trailer it, so if you want it the size of a caravan, for example, you're looking at sort of 19-20 foot, and that will be you're looking at sort of about 7 foot plus 7'2" wide, 7'2" wide will be sort of like an average. Now you can go for a rib style, or you could go for a GRP sort of boat like this. Now it really does depend. You've got the different types of engine as well, like you've got the outboards like we have here, or you've got the inboard engines which are normally under a hatch. They're both pretty good. It's just the inboard ones are usually sort of bigger engines. You'll have like much bigger, beefier engines. They're a bit harder to work on for mechanics and engineers, whereas the outboards ones are easier to work on. Costs are normally lower, and they're just more popular, I would say, nowadays than the inboards. Sort of cost-wise, I would say you're looking at anything from sort of £6,000, £6,000 to £10,000 for a rib of that sort of size, and that would be capable of taking you on coastal waters, so you could explore different areas like Torquay or the Solent where we are based. So you can sort of go to different areas like that, and that boat would be able to handle it. It would also be able to go on rivers and stuff like that as well. If you went for a GRP boat, same sort of size, 15-20 foot, that would also be capable as well. You've just got to also consider the hull shape. For English waters, you really want to have like a steep V hull, so that you can cut through those waves a bit better, rather than the sort of planing hulls of the American boats, which had a much sort of shallower hull, and that can slam when it's a bit choppy. So look for the sort of hull shapes when you're buying a boat. That's the mistake we made from our first boat to our second boat. First boat was a very shallow hull, and we learned that it wasn't the boat for us because of that, and then we had to find one that had the correct sort of shape hull and met all our criteria that we wanted, like to be able to trailer it and everything else. The newer you get and the bigger you get, the prices start to climb quite a lot. For example, a boat like this, even though this is still sort of 19 foot, it's 7 years old. Brand new, you'd be looking at about £50,000 for something like this. This being 7 years old was about 30,000. Getting in with a rib or a small cuddy boat would be ideal for the first boat. Now, if you found the perfect boat and it's on a marina, but it doesn't come with a trailer, the trailer costs, you're looking at around £5,000 to £6,000 to buy a new trailer. You can probably half that cost if you're looking at second hand, but you've just got to make sure that it's going to fit your trailer and all the rollers. It will probably need adjusting, and whether you get that done professionally or whether you do it yourself on a slipway and sort of figure out where the rollers have to be, that's another consideration to have. Ideally, it's good to buy it as a whole package, but you must always look at the trailer. Don't just think the trailer's been is roadworthy when you buy it, because it could well have been sitting in the boatyard for several years with not having any services or anything, and only going down to the slipway and back, and that was its job, really, to get the boat from a dry dock down to the slipway. And it's always good doing a complete overhaul when you purchase the trailer, just to make sure it's roadworthy. Now, moving on with the trailers, you've got trailer maintenance. Now, as just a standard, we will change our bearings and re-grease and just check the brakes every year. So at the end of the season, I take the wheels off the trailer and I'll replace the bearings. They're sealed bearings, but just as a standard practice, because I'm putting through a lot of putting them through their paces, having to go in salt water and then drive for several hundred miles and then dunking them again. So it's best you can pick the actual bearings up. The sealed bearings for my Alco trailer are about 30 to 50 pounds for the bearings. So if you can replace those yourselves, if you've got the skills to do that, it's relatively cheap and means that you can keep the trailer running, and you're not going to have a wheel fly off or something like that, which you don't really want. Now, if you want to go a little bit further, and for example, you've seen my video on where I overhauled the whole brake system, put in new brake pads, all the mechanisms and everything like that. If you get a professional to do it, you're probably looking at around £600 to £1,000 for a full trailer service with replacement brakes, brake pads, and an overhaul of all of the braking system, maybe new cables that you need for the handbrake, and making sure that everything's working. If you do it yourself, again, it's a lot cheaper, and you can probably half that cost. I think for my brake system it was about £200 just for the parts, and then I was able to do all of it myself. So it's a lot cheaper if you can do it yourself, but those are the sort of costs that you're looking at to maintain your trailer. It needs to be serviced every year, really, to make sure that it's in working order, especially if you're thinking of getting into boat trailering like us, and going to different areas all the time. So it needs to be roadworthy. The next cost is actually getting the outboard on your boat or your engine serviced. Now, it's the same as a car or a motorhome, where you're or a van. You know, you've got to have the oil filters, the air filters, and the oil replaced in these engines. On outboards, you usually also got like a water fuel separator, so it separates any water that's in the fuel line. In this boat we've actually got two of them, so they have to be replaced. Now you're looking at around sort of 500 to £1,000 per service for an engine, depending on how many miles, how many hours the engine has run. If it's a 100-hour service, it will be cheaper. I think they do 300-hour services, and it's more expensive. So it's like a car when you've got like a part service or a full service, and the costs will be different for those. So the other thing you've got to sort of look at when you're looking at maintenance are the general maintenance of a boat. You might have stress cracks in the gel coat. You might have chips in the gel coat. Now all of those sort of things might break. You might have tears in the bimini, zips breaking, little, things becoming loose, brackets breaking, all of that sort of thing. and you really want to keep on top of those as much as possible so that they don't start building up into lots of problems, and then you've got a boat that's just has just a ton of problems, and you know you're not going to be into fixing all of them. It'll cost you a fortune, so you really want to stay on top of them. For things like stress cracks, most of stress cracks will be sort of more cosmetic and visual, but again, to get a professional to fix them, you're looking at a few £100s to get gel coat repairs for damage or anything like that. But it's worth keeping on top of them to keep your boat looking nice and to keep its value up, and so that it's been well looked after. The running costs of a boat. Now, our first boat had a inboard engine, and it was a 3-litre Macruiser carburetted engine, and that was a bit of a beast. And it did drink a lot of petrol. I can't really. We'd sort of go out and we'd maybe put in sort of £50 to £60, and we'd just be chugging around the Solent. So it was a bit thirsty of an engine. That you know, that makes a difference. So this engine, the Outboard that we've got here, is 100. It's a smaller engine. It's not the 3. It's a 2.1 litre engine, and it's 115 horsepower. So it's not massive, but it's you know, it's okay. And it's also got the command thrust, which means that they put the gearing of a 140 HP engine onto this unit to give it a bit more grunt and torque in the engine. To be honest, it really suits this boat well. I really like this engine on this boat. It's much more economical. For example, the trip that you've recently seen on my videos, where we did a three-day trip in Torquay. The first day we were exploring the bay, going to Paynton Harbour, and sort of exploring all the bays around Torquay Bay. The second day we were on the picture quiz, and we were ripping around with all the guys. And then the third day was the big trip to the River Darts, and then up to Totnes and back again, and that was a 40 nautical mile trip. So for those 3 days we used £90 worth of fuel, which is not bad at all, really. So very economical, this engine. And you know, we had 3 days of jam-packed fun for that cost. So really economical, I think. You know, it can be, and it all depends on your engine. So obviously the bigger you go, the more fuel it's going to use. So that's something to consider as well. But you don't want to go too small of engine, so that you can't handle certain conditions if it gets a bit choppy out there and you're struggling a bit. So it's just getting the balance. Okay, so that's all the maintenance side of things, the purchasing of the boat, the maintenance, all the licensing stuff that you need to have. Then you've got the actual sort of holiday side of it yourself. You've got your boat, you've got it on your trailer. If you're storing it, now you can store trailers at boatyards, and they will cost you, it's like having your caravan in a storage yard. So it's going to be £600 a year to store it. It will be similar sort of costs at the marina to store the trailer and boat there, if you wanted to do that. Obviously, if you can keep it on your driveway, then you're saving costs even more. But if you have to have it down at the boatyard, then that's a great option to have it there. To actually getting it in the water, now you've got slipway costs. Now there's public slipways that are free to use for the public, but some of them are better than others. Some might have pontoons by the side that you can use. Most of them don't. It will just be a slip, so you either need waders to sort of wade in and put your anchor down while you go and move your car back into the sort of car park that they give you, and there might be spaces for the trailer there as well. So it's a bit more of a sort of, you know, it's not as convenient as using a marina. Now, for us, we're not at that level where we're sort of using public slipways yet. We like the more convenience of the marinas, but with that convenience comes extra cost. So you're looking at around sort of £25-35 to launch and recover a boat at a marina. Now, if you're launching, for example, on the River Thames, some of the marinas there can charge up to sort of £80-90 on the River Thames to launch your boat. There's more limited places where you can launch on a river like the River Thames, but again, there's also public slips, but normally they have a car park which is 200 or 300 meters away, or it's parking in a street somewhere, so it's a bit more tricky. So you've just got to sort of build that into your plan, but for us it's just using marina slipways at the moment, because that's what we're comfortable doing. If you want to find out more about the different slipways that are available, a fellow YouTuber that I know, Fat Tomo Goes Boating, does some excellent reviews of different slipways, and he's got quite a catalogue of slipway reviews, so go and check him out. You might find some of the slipways that you can use that are in your sort of locality, in your area. So then you've got the actual mooring costs of staying on a finger berth like we are now. Now, for 2 nights, it was nearly £65 at this marina, and that includes electrical hookup, the use of the facilities. You've got toilets, laundrette, Elsin. They've got a nice cafe up there as well. But you know, so it's like a campsite really, and you've got all those facilities. Those prices will vary, just like with campsites, depending on the facilities that they have. So then you've got the mooring costs, basically. So if you're not storing your boat on a trailer in the yard, but you're actually storing it on a pontoon, that's when it can get quite expensive for boating. They charge per metre for your boat, so however long your boat is, you're going to be paying more. So if you've got a long boat, you could be paying more, and you can pay sort of half yearly or yearly for the berth, and it is quite pricey. So really, ideally, you want to be looking at trailering your boat. If you're just getting into boat, you either want to be able to store it at a boat yard, on a dry dock, or just in a storage yard, or on your driveway. If you do intend to take your boat on a river, for example the River Thames, you can get sort of day licenses where you don't need to have like an MOT for your boat for the river, because they do require it. I think it's called the BSS certificate, something like that, where an examiner has to come and check that your boat is safe to actually go on the River Thames. Now that license lasts 4 years, and again it's like going for an MOT really. It's I think it's about £300, £300, £300 or £400 I think to have it done, and it lasts the 4 years. We had it done on this boat because we do intend to go on the River Thames, but I believe that if you just get a day ticket, you don't need the actual certificate license to be able to go on just for the 1 day. But we will be intending to sort of camp overnight on the Thames, so obviously we needed to get the certificate. So So that's just another thing to consider if you're going to be on the Thames. So that pretty much wraps up everything that we know about getting into boating from our own experience. Now, if you've got any comments about what we did wrong, or if I've got any of the information wrong, please let me know in the comments, and then I can sort of look at that and maybe learn something myself. But that's everything that I have learnt on my boating journey, and hopefully it will help some of you if you are ever considering getting into boating and you want to you don't know where to start. That's the sort of path that I took into boating. So I hope that was helpful, and we're going to go boating now, and we will see you on the next adventure. Bye bye.